be sharing my not quite anime review / general thoughts with you on the horror mystery anime Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, also known as When They Cry or When the Cicadas Cry. Now, as a consumer of fine Japanese animation, I'm normally someone who prefers slice of life, shoujo romance, and comedy to just about anything else. Not to say I don't enjoy a great action show or psychological thriller, but when given the choice, generally I tend to pick a slice of life show or comedy show first. I like and prefer shows that are generally upbeat and positive, and while I have no problems with darker themes present in shows I watch, I always try to keep it in moderation or balance it out with other light-hearted shows. So naturally I'm not the sort of person who enjoys the horror genre. Although I'm not exactly squeamish per se, I don't particularly enjoy being frightened. With this in mind, my considerate friends politely suggested that this sort of show probably would not be for me, and something I would not watch or like very much. As such, I promptly decided to do the exact opposite of what they suggested, and completed the series within a few days of being told not to. And to everyone's surprise, including my own, I actually greatly enjoyed the series. It was well paced, the music was great, and the mystery was not only well thought out, but was intriguing and completely satisfying. I'll do my best to keep this not quite review spoiler free, since the best thing about the story is the mystery. The basic story of Higurashi is rather simple. Mirabai Keiji, one of our main characters, moves to the small town of Himinowazawa. Everything seems well and good, and he even quickly makes friends with some local girls, Rina, Mion, later on Shion, Satoko, and Rika. However, one day, Keiichi stumbles upon the news of a murder that had occurred in Himinowazawa, mysteriously centered around the Watanashi Festival, or the Cotton Drifting Festival. As horrific events unfold, he soon learns that his close friends may not be all as they seem. The series is divided into 2 seasons. The first season asks all the questions. It's also the more violent part. It exists to present us with a lot of questions that we want the answers to. Who is this character talking about? Why is this happening? What's going on behind the scenes? Season 2 provides all the answers. It gives the answers to the questions raised in the first season, and is my favorite season of the 2. The seasons themselves are separated into arcs. After each one ends, the next one begins, and each new arc is similar but slightly different to the one that comes before it. It focuses on different characters, and looks at the same event from different angles and perspectives. It can be a little confusing if you're not expecting it, because after each arc ends, usually in death during the cotton picking festival, the story more or less restarts. Because of the way the series is structured, each character gets their moment in the spotlight, allowing each character to be fully fleshed out. By the end, you understand exactly what each character's motivations are, and why every character might have done what he or she had done. To avoid some spoilers, I can't go into too much detail revolving the characters. However, I will say I enjoyed each and every one of them, and while not every character gets the same amount of screen time, you still feel like you know and understand each of the characters by the time it's all over. And I certainly had my favorites. Each character feels necessary, and writing-wise are excellently composed. While I absolutely adore the story, there's no arguing the characters have awful designs. It's often the first thing people notice when they watch Higurashi. Now, I know the cute look of the characters is intentional. While the series is horror, during each arc, the events leading up to the Cotton Picking Festival are often actually rather lighthearted. If the first episode didn't, minor spoiler, begin with a brutal murder, there's next to nothing to suggest this is even a horror anime. It lulls you into a false sense of security as the bright colors and lighthearted tone commonly associated with the slice of life and/or moe genre confuse the viewer. If it weren't for that opening, as well as the actual opening theme, you might actually confuse it for a slice of life show. I understand the effects the designs are meant to have. They're simultaneously meant to confuse, provide juxtaposition, and give a breather between the darker moments in the show. Unfortunately, the actual moe look of the characters, mainly the female ones, does seem a bit awkward during the light and fluffy bits. Their proportions seem a bit off and exaggerated, and they have large eyes and heads that seem too big for their bodies. This is especially noticeable in the younger characters Rika and Satoko. Over time, you do get used to it, but it does take a bit of time to adjust. Surprisingly, the designs actually work to the show's benefits during the darker scenes. The cute designs remain the same, but are twisted and given more detail. Although I did complain the characters' eyes are too big, the show actually does an effective job of using the shape of the characters' pupils to reveal the characters' darker intentions. If you see one of these cute girls suddenly has slits for pupils instead of her usual rounded ones, you better start running. The designs also play a fairly important role in how the animation looks. Before the Cotton Picking Festival, while everyone is still happy and not being murdered, the animation reflects that sort of atmosphere. There's lots of chibi art style, slapstick comedy, and softer, less detailed animation. Even when the characters are doing something that's quote-unquote evil, those expressions are considered cute, exaggerated, and not meant to be taken too seriously. When things start getting serious and it's clear things are about to go downhill fast, the animation suddenly switches modes. All of a sudden you can see much more detail in a character's face and movements, and they even seem slightly more proportioned than before. The show uses the animation as if to say the fluffy bits that came before this moment were like a dream. Every moment after is the reality in all its terrifying glory. This is sort of strange for me to admit, but fear-wise, I didn't actually find the show too scary. I admit it had its moments, and it certainly put a pit in my stomach during some of the scenes, but it wasn't as bad as I imagined it might have been. The show can be highly unsettling at times, and it's certainly not afraid of using blood or gore, but it wasn't as bad as I expected. The show is very well paced and doesn't bombard you with dark scenes, it builds up to them. And while the show is violent, a lot of the violent stuff actually happens off-screen. Don't let your guard down though. There are some brutal on-screen deaths as well. There also aren't any jump scares or any sort of cheap scare tactics like that. To me, the horror aspects came more from the unsettling atmosphere and the feelings of dread. Don't get me wrong, Higurashi isn't exactly unscary, just a little less than I anticipated. At least we forget the fingernail scene. The selling point of this anime for me is the mystery. While I'm sure most people are looking to be scared and enjoy that sort of thing, much like eating a warhead, the horror is just what I had to endure to get to the satisfying conclusion. Now let's get to the most important part. Would I recommend the show? Yes and no. Despite loving the show for its complex mystery and storytelling, I do struggle with actually recommending the show to others. While I don't mind dark stories, my bread and butter is slice of life, and I don't usually feel comfortable recommending shows I think not everyone might enjoy. That being said, if you like creepy horror, there's a good chance you'll like at least the first season. The second season is less violent and scary than the first, focusing more on the plot and solving the mystery. If you're interested in an intricate, well-paced story and don't mind a bit of horror mixed in with moe elements, this show's probably for you. If you're squeamish or prefer your cute girls not to be violently murdering each other, you could probably stand to look elsewhere. While I wouldn't easily recommend this show to everyone, I would highly recommend it to those who are willing to give it a try.